A federal judge has decided former Vice President Mike Pence must appear before a grand jury investigating former President Trump's efforts to overturn the 2020 election. The decision sweeping aside separate legal efforts by both Pence and Trump. Pence has argued the vice president's role as president of the Senate, follow me here, grants him constitutional protections. CBS News chief election and campaign correspondent Robert Costa and CBS News political director Fin Gomez join us now to break all of the politics down on this. Bob, I want to start with you because you have been following all of this so closely. Pence had said that he was going to fight this subpoena to appear. It appears that he is not going to win that battle. Tell us a little bit more about what the vice president has to do here.
Caitlin, it's good to be with you. As you reported in your own interview with former Vice President Mike Pence, he has been making an argument that it would be unconstitutional for him to participate as a witness in this grand jury proceeding due to his role as not only the former vice president, but the former president of the U.S. Senate. He has always had, just as every vice president has had, a constitutional role in the legislative branch. His lawyers have said this speech and debate clause as part of the Constitution should prevent him from testifying. But a federal judge has said, no, sir, you must testify in this investigation and provide testimony about your private exchanges with former President Trump. That all being said, the former vice president could still try to appeal this decision, perhaps all the way up to the Supreme Court.
Yeah, as he has said that he would do. Bob, you're coming to us from Lower Manhattan, and we should explain why, because you're also covering this grand jury investigation into former President Trump and alleged hush money payments to Stormy Daniels. I know you have some new reporting about kind of the status of this grand jury and whether there is, in fact, an indictment looming this week. Tell us a little bit more about that and who else we saw testify in front of the grand jury this week.
Caitlin, might I offer 3 letters, TBD, to be determined. We are at a stasis moment here in this ongoing grand jury investigation in Manhattan. The district attorney, Alvin Bragg, is taking his time to look over the documents he's accumulated with his investigation, to think through whether he wants to pursue additional witnesses. While the grand jury heard from David Pecker on Monday, the former publisher of the National Enquirer, it's unclear if the district attorney wants to bring further witnesses before this grand jury, before the district attorney ultimately decides whether or not he will seek an indictment of former President Donald Trump.
So TBD on that, but the presidential primary in which Trump is running is full steam ahead, Finn, and we're seeing these gloves come off between Trump and DeSantis. Trump took to Fox News last night, where he hasn't appeared in a while. I want to play a little clip, and then we'll talk about it.
Ron came to see me, tears in his eyes. He said, I need you to do me a big favor. First he asked for the meeting, then he asked me for the favor. I said, what's the favor? Would you endorse me? I got him the nomination. By the way, could have never gotten the nomination. He would be working in either a pizza parlor place or a law office right now, okay? And he wouldn't be very happy.
All right, so Finn, it's obvious that former President Trump is thinking a lot about the Florida governor. Tell us a little bit about what you think of that exchange.
Well, it's not a new one. He keeps repeating it. He said it, essentially, he started that a couple weeks ago when we traveled with him to Davenport, Iowa. And we just saw this sort of this change, this pivot to where he just fully started attacking Ron DeSantis, who, as we know, has not entered the race yet. He's expected to after his legislative session in Tallahassee. But clearly, it seems that he believes that DeSantis and his likely entry into the race will be his biggest competition. We spoke to a source close to DeSantis and actually close to Trump, too, who said that to him, it was clear that to attack someone who's not even in the race yet shows that he thinks he can be beaten by him.
Interesting. And just quickly, too, I know you have some new reporting on some former Trump people moving over to a DeSantis PAC. Again, I know he hasn't announced his run yet, but what does that tell us? Tell us a little bit more about who's moving over there.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, Caitlin, because in the last few days, Aaron Navarro, our CBS News political reporter, and I have been reporting on how these former Trump officials, in part from the 2020 campaign, Aaron Perrine, Matt Wolking, sort of these heavy hitters and sort of rising stars, if you will, of these political operative world. Have now jumped over to this pro-DeSantis PAC, never back down. So, and you've also seen these other sort of one person described it to me as like the Yankees of these GOP operatives. Like Jeff Rowe was formerly with Ted Cruz in 2016. He's now a senior advisor, and Phil Cox, who was his advisor during his DeSantis' reelect campaign, is now shifted over, amongst others. And you're seeing this increasing like strength, if you will, this firepower politically that's being concentrated in this PAC, which is and interestingly enough, it's not just this expectation of ads and oppo that you think that you're expecting from this PAC, but also maybe some grassroots operations, some untraditional methods that we may be seeing as DeSantis potentially readies himself for a 2024
Interesting.
entry.
So kind of laying the groundwork for whenever DeSantis gets in the race.
Right.
That's interesting because we always follow the staff movements. That tells us a lot about where the race is. Finn Gomez right here, Bob Costa in New York. Thank you both.